All right, so my name's Luke Allen. I grew up in Rockaway Beach, Queens. The fire department was always kind of in the wings for me. I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do. I went to Brooklyn College. I graduated from there. I started grad school for English and Education. And the whole time I had the fire department, I took the fire department test, and I wasn't sure if I wanted to do it or not. A lot of my family's in the fire department. Both my brother-in-laws, my older brother was. I have uncles, cousins, and it was always like, all right, maybe I'll do that. But I always knew I wanted to do something noble. Like if I was gonna go and like spend a majority of my time doing something as a career, I always wanted to either be teaching or firefighting. Like growing up in Rockaway, I was a lifeguard every summer, and I always knew I wanted to do something that was helping people, because it's like if I'm gonna spend a lot of my time, a lot of my life into doing something, I'm gonna do something worthwhile. So when I went to grad school, the teaching thing was it just wasn't for me. It was I was substitute teaching, and that was a horrible experience. I don't recommend it. No, it just wasn't for me. I felt like I was putting out more fires in the classroom than I was in actual, I'd rather run into burning buildings, in other words. So I tried to give the fire department a shot, and when it was, it's a 20-year career, or now it's like 22, I think it is, but going into it, I was like 20 years. That's like, no way, So I told myself it was my 5-year plan, and if I liked it within 5 years, I'd continue to do it. And I just hit 9 years a day, and I studied for the promotional exam, and I'm looking to climb up the ranks. So yeah, that's basically how I got to where I'm at now as far as the fire department goes. It's a brief, edited version anyway.
I'm Brooke Guinan. I grew up on Long Island. I come from a family of firefighters. My grandfather is a retired firefighter, and my dad still works in Brooklyn. He's a lieutenant there. I never wanted to be a firefighter. Growing up, it took a lot of effort for people to stop me from singing and dancing all over the place. So I did community theater. I graduated. I went to Wagner College on Staten Island for music theater performance. While I was in college, that's when my gender started to be an issue for me. I had always assumed it was like a gay thing, a sexuality thing. So I came out as gay when I was 12, and being the only gay kid in my town, I was like, oh, that's totally what it is. And then I got to college, and there were like all these other gay people there, and I was like, whoa, hold up, that's not me. So I was in college, and that started happening, and I got really into sociology. And that's what I wound up graduating with, as a bachelor's in sociology with a minor in gender studies and a minor in theater. And my junior/senior year of college was when my gender identity was really becoming an issue for me. And I was thinking about transitioning, and I didn't know what to do. And honestly, the fire department was sort of like a last-ditch effort to prove to myself and the world around me that I could be a man, and we all see how that turned out. So didn't quite go as I was planning at the time. So it was sort of a last-ditch effort to like please my family and the world and be a boy, and it was actually probably the biggest catalyst in me transitioning to be a woman. The video came about, a friend of mine who's a paramedic, Sam Wilding, who's in the video. She and I were hanging out one day, and she was like, have you ever thought about an It Gets Better video? And I was like, what do you mean? And she was like, well, I saw that the NYPD's done one, and like I was watching a whole bunch of them, and they're really cool, and she was like, I was wondering if the FDNY would want to do one, and I was like, I don't know, let me check. And so I went to a friend of mine who works in the press office, and I said, someone wants to do an It Gets Better video, what would you think of that? And he was like, yeah, why not? Let's do it. And from there, it just sort of snowballed and like rapidly built up, and so I think the concept came about in like June, like May or June, and we shot it in August, and it came out in October. So that's sort of how it came about. The department was totally behind it, and wound up being really cool.
Yeah, Brooke just approached me and asked me if I'd be interested, and I had to think about it for about 30 seconds, just with a little bit of a no about the It Gets Better project, and it was just, yeah, of course, like, why wouldn't I do that, and yeah, it's like she said, it was just, we shot in August, and in October I was actually away on vacation, and where I was, I didn't have great reception, and then like once I got into like an area of great reception, my phone just had like 400 messages on it, because it was in the Daily News. It was like, I didn't realize it would be as big as it was. I knew it was gonna be like make a little bit of a bump, but it was as much more than I expected anyway. But yeah, the fire department, they were definitely behind it. The Office of Recruitment Diversity, it helps them, show like, they're a diverse department, they're accepting of everyone and everything like that. And it also helped us, get our message out, which is way more important than the fire department saying that it's a diverse department. It's, if we reach with just one kid, it makes a difference.
When Sam came to me and told me about it, I was like, yeah, sure, I'll go to the department. I'll ask them if they're interested. But there was a part of me that, like, I've never really been a huge fan of the It Gets Better videos. And so for me, like, I had to like really think about it and like think about what they represented, because as a trans person, as someone who for a really long time like had to work hard to find like the good in people in the world around me, like like it's just so just statistically, factually, this year there have been more trans deaths and suicides than any other year, and not by like a smidge, but like double the amount of last year and the year before. And so so to me, like, I had to think, I had to be like, how can I possibly make a video, be a part of this message that tells, like, 13-year-old trans kids, like, if you even know that you're trans at 13, saying, don't worry, it gets better. Like, everything's gonna be fine. And I was like, how do you make a video saying that when you know the statistics, when you know the reality of it, when you know the reality of the suicide rates, the unemployment rates, the housing rates, the suicide rates, the murder rates, the assaults, everything. Those statistics are staggering. They're not just surprising, they're not just shocking, they are awe-inspiringly staggering. And the conclusion that I eventually came to was, the saying is it gets better, not everything's perfect. And so that's how I approached it. And honestly, as a trans person, as someone who's been suicidal and self-harming, as someone who, as recently as like 4 years ago, didn't know if I would literally be sitting here today, didn't know if I wanted to, didn't know if I saw like a place for myself in the world, I felt a little more comfortable saying it gets better, because I think it does. And as I said in the video, I mean, I feel like this video it's geared towards anyone it can help, anyone who's in that situation, but the It Gets Better project is geared towards LGBTQ youth. And I feel like part of what happens when you're younger, I certainly know what happened to me, is it gets really hard to see beyond now. It gets really hard to see tomorrow, next week, 5 years from now. Everything is sort of like a very present pain. And it's just, you're so in that moment. And so I think, 14-year-old me would have appreciated this video, would have sat there and said, maybe it's not perfect. At the time when I was 14, there was no such thing as marriage equality. I didn't even know what being trans was. I had never heard the word at 14. But at 14, someone saying, it may not get perfect, it may not be everything that you need the world to be, but it does get better. you get more secure with who you are, and that makes it better. So everything's not going to be perfect. Everyone's not going to love you. Everyone's not going to accept you. But at the end of the day, you will find a place where, you have people who do love and accept you and support you. And at 14, I couldn't see that all the time. So having something like this to remind me that at 14 would have made a difference to me. And so at that point, I couldn't not do it. I thought it was amazing.
Friday was Transgender Remembrance Day, and we had several conferences here Thursday, Friday, and Saturday that we did take a moment of silence, and we did actually talk about these things. But I think for many of the students that are sitting here at St. Francis College, this is new. This is like language that they're acquainting themselves with. So when I talk about some of these stats, and you're very authentically talking about, I could have been one of those people, and that's a reality for me. I think students, it's still new. Like, still really raw. And my healthcare management class, we talk about how do we sort of really have this really honest dialogue about diversity. And what does it mean? I think when Luke, when you were talking about, okay, where do I sort of fit in this picture, that really eloquently sort of says that. How does it mean for myself? And then what does it mean for the people that I work for? There's that two layers, right? It's that professional and personal. And I think, Brooke, you've done this great job of trying to merge that and share that with the world. I mean, your video has been seen over and over and over and again. And I think I really congratulate both of you and everyone on the group that made the video.
This is a small gay group of firefighters. So we meet up like once every other month or once a month and just go out to get dinner and stuff. And it's kind of nice because you can merge the two worlds. You can, the firehouse kitchen is like notoriously kind of, can be rough around the edges, I guess is an easy way to put it. So you get to, be rough around the edges, but like a little gay twist to it. So it's a nice place to be because you can marry your two worlds a little bit. It's not, I wouldn't say it's a complete separation though, because you're always carrying you around with you. I would say even more so for Brooke. She wears it more than I can just easily assimilate and be like, oh yeah, I'm a straight dude. Oh, there is, I guess, a little bit of compartmentalization. But it's not something I necessarily work at. Maybe more so when I first got into the department, I was like, kept my mouth shut and like, just, hopefully no one will find out. And they already knew, like, just because people let them know before I got there. So it was just, initially I thought I would be able to do it a little bit more and be like, but again, it's like you are who you are and you can't really hide it essentially. I guess you can, but I had no real desire want to. So how about you?
Yeah, I would agree that I compartmentalize things too. Obviously, I am who I am. As Luke said, I am who I am where I go, and I am the only woman in my firehouse. I'm the only queer person in my firehouse. I'm the only trans person in my firehouse. So certainly, there's no escaping some parts of that. But I definitely feel like I do keep some things to myself. Like, the people in my firehouse, they do know, they know some things about my personal life and like we can joke around and, whatever. But at the end of the day, I do feel like I have my sort of little world at home that I go home to, and it's like a little retreat sort of deal, it's definitely different. For me, it's definitely different, like being in the firehouse and being around people who are not familiar with everything. Yeah, of course. On top of the fact that we're firefighters, so, we're dealing with, pretty stressful situations on a regular basis. But yeah, it's definitely stressful on top of that too. How do I deal with stress? I'm a big car singer. So, I get in the car, put on my Adele, thank you Adele for New Reasons to Cry. But, put on my Adele or Sarah Bareilles or Beyonce or whatever, depending on my mood and my need. I don't call Luke. No, yeah, I think, like, being a firefighter, I think we all have different ways to sort of.
When I was younger, I
De-stress.
had different ways. Like when I was younger, I definitely was going out and partying. That was definitely a way I would like, all right, let me decompress, and it was also a way for me to be surrounded by my people, and just like kind of going to gay bars in Manhattan or something like that, and just be like, I guess I was compartmentalizing more than I thought I was, because then I could really just relax and be me. It got to a point where it was like it wasn't working for me anymore. It was just it keep on trying, but really I would just end up being miserable. So I kind of turned that into like I was kind of healthy, and the fire department actually kind of pushes you towards that direction. So I started focusing more on that and more on the sports I love and reading, writing, and now I'm into yoga and meditation and just different ways of actually de-stressing and becoming more authentically yourself, I guess, because the drinking, the partying, it's fun sometimes, but a lot of times it's the illusion of fun. It's not actual fun, and it's just you're not really fully aware of it because you're dimmed. Your senses aren't really there, There was definitely a deciding point where it's like, all right, I'm done with that path, and let me try to find another way that actually works. So. Good.
Was it harder for you to come out as someone who was gay or to come out as transgender?
They're different. Coming out as gay. I don't know, coming out as gay, I feel like when I say I came out as gay, I feel like it's almost a little bit of a lie, because I've always been this way my entire life, minus maybe the painted nails, but everything else, pretty much, yeah. So I actually, coming out as gay for me was like a default. It was, I came out as gay when I was 12, but the first time I heard the word gay used against me was, I was probably 9 or 10. I was in 5th grade. And so I hadn't come out, but I had been hearing that word and it had been attributed to me for years before I came out. So I almost feel like when I came out as gay, it was just it was like acknowledging this thing that everyone else saw in me. And of course it was difficult. Of course there were parts of it that were difficult because, no one ever wants to sort of be like, oh yes, I am this thing, which you say is really bad, and it is me. But at the same time, as I said, I didn't even hear the word trans, I think, for the first time until, probably until right before I went away to college. And I saw the movie Soldier's Girl, which is, it's a Showtime movie about the story of Calpurnia Adams and PFC Barry Winchell. And he was murdered for being in a relationship with her, and she was a trans woman. So that was, I think, the first time I really had seen and heard trans in my world. So it was different, and trans was just, I don't know, that was definitely a rough one to come out with, because that was sort of my own doing. I feel like we hear the word gay used as an insult all day long, but we don't hear people walking around being like, "Ha, you're so trans." No, I don't. I don't feel like I've never heard that. Maybe I'm behind the times. Maybe I'm out of date, and that's the new thing. But I haven't really heard that. But then at the same time, coming out as trans was also a bit like coming home. So at the same time, it was difficult, but anytime you come out, there's this level of difficulty of sort of acknowledgement and what are people going to think, and there's all those questions. But then at the same time, I feel like coming out is always partially just accepting who you are, and so I feel like that's a good thing. I feel like that's almost that's cathartic. I feel like that's the de-stressing thing of I'm gonna stop lying and I'm gonna stop denying, and I'm sort of just gonna be you know what, there's this thing and it's me, and that's it. Like, it's sort of just like this letting go of all the secrets and shame and hiding and whatever.
Liberating, I guess is the word, you know?
Yeah, I don't know. What did coming out feel like for you?
It was always something that was there. Like, I kind of said in the video, it was always something that was a kind of like, I didn't really want to acknowledge it, you know? It was always, and it would bubble up as I was like going through adolescence and stuff, and I was like, okay, let's not like pay attention to that. And I dated girls throughout growing up through like my early 20s, and had girlfriends, and I actually fell in love with some, you know, and like had like legit, like authentic relationships with them. But there was always this thing that was just, it was strong, and it was just growing stronger, and like I would kind of try to suppress it, and it just came to the point where it was just, you know, like, let me go find out what this is about. And I had gay friends, and, you know, they kind of just like,
I don't know, coming out as gay, I feel like when I say I came out as gay, I feel like it's almost a little bit of a lie, because I've always been this way my entire life, minus maybe the painted nails, but everything else, pretty much, yeah. So I actually, coming out as gay for me was like a default. It was, I came out as gay when I was 12, but the first time I heard the word gay used against me was, I was probably 9 or 10. I was in like 5th grade. And so I hadn't come out, but I had been hearing that word, and it had been attributed to me for years before I came out. So I almost feel like when I came out as gay, it was just like, it was like acknowledging this thing that everyone else saw in me. And like, of course it was difficult. Of course there were parts of it that were difficult, because, you know, no one ever wants to sort of be like, oh yes, I am this thing which you say is really bad, and it is me. But at the same time, you know, as I said, I didn't even hear the word trans, I think, for the first time until, probably until right before I went away to college. And I saw the movie Soldier's Girl, which is, it's a Showtime movie about the story of Calpurnia Adams and PFC Barry Winchell. And he was murdered for being in a relationship with her, and she was a trans woman. So that was, I think, the first time I really had seen and heard trans in my world. So so it was different, and trans was just, I don't know, that was definitely that was a rough one to come out with, because that was sort of my own doing. Like, you know, I feel like we hear the word gay used as an insult like all day long, but we don't hear people walking around being like, "Ha, you're so trans." Like, no, I don't feel like I've never heard that. Maybe I'm behind the times. Maybe like I'm out of date and that's the new thing. But I haven't really heard that. But then at the same time, coming out as trans was also a bit like coming home. So at the same time, it was difficult, but anytime you come out, there's this level of difficulty of sort of acknowledgement, and what are people going to think, and, you know, there's all those questions. But then at the same time, I feel like coming out is always partially just accepting who you are. And so I feel like that's a good thing. I feel like that's almost like, that's cathartic. I feel like that's like the de-stressing thing of like, I'm going to stop lying, and I'm going to stop denying, and I'm sort of just going to be like, you know what, there's this thing, and it's me, and that's it. Like, it's sort of just like this letting go of all the secrets and shame and hiding and whatever.
Liberating, I guess is the word, you know?
Yeah, I don't know. What did coming out feel like for you?
It was always something that was there. Like, I kind of said in the video, it was always something that was a kind of like, I didn't really want to acknowledge it, you know? It was always, and it would bubble up as I was like going through adolescence and stuff, and I was like, okay, let's not like pay attention to that. And I dated girls throughout growing up through like my early 20s, and had girlfriends, and I actually fell in love with some, you know, and like had like legit, like authentic relationships with them. but there was always this thing that was just, it was strong, and it was just growing stronger, and like I would kind of try to suppress it, and it just came to the point where it was just, you know, like, let me go find out what this is about. And I had gay friends, and, you know, they kind of just like, you know, come to the party. So like I went, and then like, and it was like, all right, this might be me, you know, and it was just like, and initially it was like, damn it, like I don't want this to be me, because it's like, it's everything against that I was actually, you know, kind of like, you know, socially constructed to be, you know. I still occasionally I'm like, yeah, having the wife and the kids and the white picket fence would be nice, you know, but it's not me. So it's like really like I'd be fighting be fighting myself to actually have that, you know. So I didn't come out until I was 23, and everyone that I was, you know, basically friends with, all my family, like my mom didn't believe me, because like I grew up with girlfriends, you know, and bringing girls to proms and stuff like that, and like I don't know if essentially I was really living a lie, because at the time it was like that's who I was, you know, but like it was just this other part of me that I was like really actively like, you know, suppressing, and it just got to the point where it's just like, all right, this is me. Like I kind of was like, all right, I forfeit, I give up, you know, and this is me. And then like when I came out to people, it was a lot of people were shocked. I had a lot of close friends that were like, they had a hard time with it. It was almost because like I was rewriting their narrative, you know. Not only was I rewriting my narrative, I was rewriting theirs, and it was just like I had to give them some time, like, and then eventually like they saw that I wasn't different from who I was before. Like I came up to one of my sisters, and she started crying. She was worried I was gonna like, I don't know, start becoming really campy, and like, I don't know, so like become like a desire to like go cut hair or something like that, and become like and I was like, no, like, and like obviously there's nothing wrong with that, but like it's like I'm still gonna be who I am, you know. It's just I just have a preference to sleeping with men. That's all it is. Like that's really, in the end of the day, is very unimportant with who I am, you know, who I show up to be every day. So it's like, yeah, it's a major, you know, part of who I am, but like, is it really that important? Like, at the end of the day, like, no. Like, initially it was my gay friends. Like, I, you know, obviously, like that was just like they're the, you know, the ones that were like more welcoming, and I already kind of, you know, blazed through that trail for themselves. So it was like there was a little bit of, you know, a wake I could follow, you know, to make it a little bit smoother for me. And then, just luckily, I have a very accepting family. I have a big family, a lot of brothers and sisters, you know. And like some were like, oh, all right. Like I came with my older brother, and he was like, all right, good for you, you know. And it was just like, it was like nothing, you know. And it was like that was just a great way to like, and just to hear. It was great to hear, because at the time I was like, oh my God, this is me. It was like so heavy to handle, you know. You know, and then like one of my sisters had a little bit more hard time with it, but again, it would just give her time. My dad had a little bit of a difficult time with it, but give her time. And they came around, and they just saw that, like, you know, it was not that big of a deal, you know. Now my support group, like majority of my friends are, you know, gay, I guess, you know, more like the ones I hang out with the most, but not all of them, you know, they're all straight, and they're all mixed, you know, and my family again.
Growing up, my biggest support system was fictional characters. Buffy was probably the biggest role model in my life from like age like 13 through high school graduation. Yeah, I don't think I really had a whole lot of friends growing up. But I was really fortunate enough that in college, there was this person on my dorm floor, and we bonded like the first night when everyone gets together and like does the whole like get to know everyone on your floor thing, and we had to like say what our favorite movies were, and we lived I was put on the floor with the football team. So I think my roommate Matt and we were at the time the two gay guys on the football floor. And how it wound up that like we wound up being the only two non-football people on that floor, I have no clue. And then the other side was where the women were, and so we were like hanging out one night, and so everyone's going out and saying what their favorite like movies are, and I think I blocked out most of the answers, but my friend Shane said Aladdin, and I was like, yes. And we just bonded over our mutual love of like Disney and dorkiness, and you know, fabulosity. And and then we pulled a Freaky Friday moment in sophomore year because he came out to me as trans, and I was like, shut up, no, really? And he was like, yeah, I'm changing my name to Shane, and I'm going to start using male pronouns. And I was like, that's totally great. Can I take your female ones? And so we were just each other's support system. We went through it sort of together, and to this day, we're best friends. And we're going to go see a nice RuPaul drag show in a couple of weeks. So, yeah. I mean, we talk about it like it wasn't that long ago, like it doesn't still happen. Like, you know, like almost half of homeless youth are not LGBTQ identified. That's not an accident. But at the same time, you know, again, it was decades ago that, you know, our own government sort of took a health crisis and made it into propaganda against people of a sexuality. You know, it's not that long ago that Stonewall happened and that there had to be an uprising because people were so tired of being jailed and beaten. And, you know, I think that's queer culture historically has been, it's been like a culture because queer culture has been like a family, because a lot of times historically it was queer people who had to be their own families. You know, you had to develop families and develop friends that were going to support you and take care of you, because your family wouldn't. And so I feel like, unfortunately, there are all too many places in the world where that's still the case. And so I don't know how you would go about doing that, about creating this sort of family for your friends. But I feel like that's the only thing I could really think of, is that just like creating those connections and being there for them and allowing them to sort of allowing them to form support networks for each other, if that's even possible. That might be a good way to go about doing it. But
I know individually too, like especially for myself when I was coming out, like knowing that it was like kind of like a fad, not necessarily a fad, but like in ancient Greek times, like homosexual like relationships weren't, you know, completely uncommon. It was actually a lot more more accepted than, you know, that it is today in a sense, you know. And like even like I heard like Alexander the Great might have been gay, and then someone handed me the book The Persian Boy, and I was like, holy shit, like this is like major historical figures that are like, you know, they're gay. I'm like, oh, you know, it's great, fine, you know. So it's made it more comfortable for me on an individual level, knowing that, you know, that maybe it's just a fad at times where it's just, you know, and we obviously see like the changing of the tide as far as it becoming more accepting, gay marriage and everything like that, you know, and even just on the fire department, on a microcosm of that, you know, it's just how much more accepting people are, you know. It's just because it's like now it's just not that big of a deal, you know. Where in the 50s and like they had to like literally fight for it, you know. So, and then just oppose that to, you know, back to the Greek times when it was just like, you know, everyone loved everyone, you know. It's just like, and that might just be my uneducated, you know, version of it. But
was it like harder on your parents coming out, like for both of you, like coming out as trans and then coming out as gay? Because I know right now I'm gay, but I want to come out as trans, and that's like super harder. Like it's seen as like the super outcast. So like, how was it for your parents? Like, did they take it to like a whole nother level, being that your friends were like the closest people to you that was like your support?
my parents were like, initially my dad had a little hard time with it, and my mom didn't believe me. She was like, stop, no you're not. And I was like, oh yeah, you know. But now that they're like, you know, like I said before, it's like you're kind of rewriting their narrative. So like they had this idea of who you are, and it was, you know, that was going on nice and merrily. And then when you like kind of stop that and like, no, this is really what it is, they kind of initially it jolts them, and then, you know, then the information settles, and then it's a rewrite, you know. And it's like, all right, this is what this is now. And like my parents couldn't be more proud of me. I think like my mom, you know, she's, after this came out, like she gave me a huge hug, and you know, and like my dad's like kind of like, you know, the stoic, good job, you know, like that kind of thing, you know. So, but I, as far as the trans thing goes, like obviously I'm not trans, so I can't really speak for that. But I couldn't imagine how much more difficult that is.
Yeah, coming out, when I told my parents I was gay when I was 12, the biggest issue they had was, the whole, you're so young, how could you possibly know, like, and all that. And so I think they were in a position where they were maybe holding out some sort of hope that, like, well, you're 12, you don't know yet, maybe you'll grow out of it, maybe whatever. And eventually they sort of came around to everything, and they were very supportive. And then when I came out as coming out as trans for me was a process. So when I went away to college, I sort of, figured out that I wasn't like other gay guys, and I was like, okay, so there's something else going on here. And I started taking courses about sexuality and gender studies, and so there was like a period of time where I was very genderqueer, where I had, where it would not be uncommon to see me on any given day with a goatee and eyeliner, or like a goatee and mascara and eyeshadow, and and so my parents had a very difficult time with that sort of time in my life because they didn't know what to tell people. So my mother had some conversations with me about, like, your family, your aunt is asking why you're wearing nail polish. And she was like, and I didn't know what to tell her. And I was like, well, tell her that I thought purple was a really pretty color. But so that was really hard for them because they didn't know what to say. And then when I came out when I told them that I was transitioning, that I wasn't just confused about my gender. It wasn't that I didn't identify as a man and I didn't identify as a woman, which I thought that for a while, which I think, again, that for me, I think was, I don't know, it's such a complicated question. The whole gender system in our culture is just it's very binary, and it's very fabricated. We are, like Judith Butler says, we are sort of, there's reality and then there's what's real. And you would think that our reality would reflect what's real, that our culture, our the reality that we live in, that we accept as what's real, would be a result of what actually is real, the hard, concrete facts of the world and of biology and of all these things. You would think that what's real forms reality. But what actually happens is the exact opposite. What we accept culturally as our reality is what informs what exists, and it limits our ability to understand the world around us. So when we're born, you have to check off a box, for the baby's sex. Are you a boy or are you a girl? It doesn't account for intersexuality, which is a biologically naturally occurring phenomenon where people are born not male and not female, where people are born either looking like they are born with clearly male or clearly female anatomy, but they have different chromosomal makeup, they have different hormonal makeup, and then there are people who are born who have ambiguous genitalia, and we sort of just pass that off as like, oh, well, that's some abnormality. And it's like, okay, we call it an abnormality because it's not normal, but it is a biologically occurring natural phenomenon. So what does that mean that we don't have language to describe what that is? There is no third sex to define this person as. So therefore, our reality is not shaped by the biological. It's not shaped by what actually occurs in the world, in nature. It's shaped by what we are taught and what our culture reproduces within us. So, having that be said, there are a lot of people who deny the existence of a binary altogether, and they identify as genderqueer, and that is their gender. their gender is genderqueer. They are not male, they are not female, they are both, they are whatever they identify as. So when I say I was genderqueer, that's how I identified for a time, but it's not how I wound up identifying now. However, there are people who identify as that, and I want to make sure that by saying I identified as genderqueer and now I identify as a trans woman, I'm not devaluing the identity of genderqueer people or saying that that's like a transitional time period, because there are people who identify as genderqueer and will always identify as genderqueer, and that is a valid identity and a valid gender or non-gender, depending on how they view it. But for me, after I went through a period of, I guess, like 4 or 5 years of sort of trying to figure out what my gender was and saying that I didn't identify as male and I wasn't sure if I identified as female, so I sort of identified as neither or both, I decided to transition to female. And when I did that, that was difficult for my mother. I think at that point my father had sort of come to this place where he was like, whatever, just tell me what it is today. But my mother, when I came to her and I said I'm going to start hormones, my mother said, and this was like a year or two after I got out of the academy, I had moved home. My mother told me that she was going to need me to leave the house because she couldn't stand by and watch me do that to my own body. Luckily, my dad sort of pulled her aside and was like, hey, what's up? What are you doing? This is our kid. And she came around and it was really awkward for a while, and now we can like go bra shopping and everything is fine. But it's really complicated. And so I think your question was like, which one's harder? And I feel like it's the same as, was it harder to come out as gay or trans? I feel like they both have their own difficulties, and they're both sort of contextualized by who you're coming out to. So it really depends on your family. It depends on what your parents are like. For me, I would say coming out as trans was harder. Yeah, I would say coming out as trans was harder. But I think I had more difficulty in coming out as trans than I did as gay, so that could just very well be my own insecurities about coming out as trans, which affected that. And I'm done talking now for the moment.